Okay. All right, we are on the air. Coming to you live from the Developer Lounge here at the intersection of Java 1 and Oracle Open World. I'm Bob Rubart with the Oracle Developer Community. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about API management and about modern software architecture. So I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves. So go ahead.
Yeah, hello. My name is Arturo Viveros. I'm from Mexico, based in Oslo, Norway. And yeah, I will let these guys introduce themselves as well.
My name is Luis Weir. I'm a chief architect in Capgemini UK. I live in the UK, but I'm actually from Venezuela. I'm an API evangelist.
Hi, I'm Phil Wilkins. I'm from the UK as well, and an Oracle Ace. I'm working with a lot of iPaaS and APIs.
So, Louis, I want to direct the first question to you because you're at this event. You seem to be Mr. API. You're speaking in 4 different sessions at Open World.
That's right.
You've already got 1 book out. This was in 2015. That was actually on a different Oracle product, but implementing API management through that product. You've got 2 books in the works now that are on API management.
Yeah, that's
correct?
right.
Why? You're a middleware guy going way back, and you've written and talked and presented about service-oriented architecture. Why this passion about API management?
Well, it's like everything we wanted to accomplish in SOA, now we are accomplishing. It's like we went back to basics, and now APIs are understood by the business. If you Google, for example, eBay API program or developer program, you see the CEO of eBay talking about APIs. How cool is that? Rewind 5-7 years. No one got it. It was a buzz. Everyone wanted to develop services. The benefits were around, yeah, service-oriented architecture is a silver bullet, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, tangibly, we didn't see the benefits realizing as we can see in API. API created an economy. But still SOA, the principles of service-oriented architecture are pretty much rock solid. It's just a different way to talk about it. Mm-hmm. It's a different implementation style. But you know, the transition was, for me, very natural. It was, it's been a journey and it's been great, and I just think people get it. And I love talking about it because people get it. So that's probably the reason, or maybe because I'm a geek and I just like it.
Phil, what drew you into this interest in API management?
Not too different from Lewis's story. When we were working with SOA, we got killed by the over-complexity of the technologies. And APIs really encapsulate the real value proposition of abstraction and service thinking. And it's so much simpler to achieve that we can deliver now against some of the ideas that we've been trying to achieve for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, of that simplicity of abstraction of contract. So you don't have to understand how something's being built. As long as you understand the contract, you just call the service, the API, and magic happens, even if that means that's a little robot running around in the background.
Well said, man.
Yeah.
Arturo, you're a SOA guy from way back. What's your interest in API management?
Yeah, I think with Luis particularly, we've been talking for a while, and I think since 2 or 3 years ago, we agreed and we knew or suspected that API management was going to become big in the near future. And as he said, now we are seeing that it's materializing. We are watching before our eyes this like new generation, or as he has put it, the 3rd generation of APIs which we have to work with. So yeah, I mean, you cannot, even though the principles of service orientation are of course still valid, but you cannot stay in the past with this technology. You have to provide to the customers value with all this new way and new paradigms of doing things and designing software effectively. And yeah, this about API economy, we know it's true. We know companies are profiting on that. We know a lot of services that are available to us are given through APIs. So yeah, it's so interesting.
Talk about opportunities for developers in developing APIs. If they're not already taking an interest in that particular field, why should they?
Well, APIs are value to the business, right? It's very simple. But more than that, if you combine APIs with other architecture styles like microservices, for example, you deliver more flexibility and agility, right? Which means that you can create modern business solutions, right, quicker in a market that's been, pushed very, very heavily by disruptors and startups, right? So, and all this comes, if you rewind, it all comes from, the likes of Netflix, right? These guys that created these architectures that could scale because, internet was their audience, right? And they had to support a global audience, right? And these architectures are now cascading down, right? People are adopting them. But as Adrian Cockford said, who was from Netflix and now he's a VP in Amazon, he said, speed wins in the marketplace. And these type of architectures are helping you also gain speed. So if you are a developer, right, the techniques and the approaches are so cool because you are not constrained to a monolithic platform. You can choose. I mean, within a range, I have my own views on how flexible polyglot you should be. But nevertheless, you have more options to create stuff in different languages, right? You can create these services that are more atomic and deployable, right, and easy to scale. You can use containers. I mean, the technology is there to be used. And there's so many options now, which in a way is really, really interesting. But on the other hand, from an architectural perspective, it's also important to understand what is it that we're doing and what is the role of each technology within an architectural landscape. So,
Arturo, you're nodding vigorously. What would you have to say?
Yeah, I think as a developer, the nice things about API management is that it really allows you to bring together the design with the implementation in a way that wasn't possible before. And what I mean is, you always can do like a great design, and in paper it looks great and the architecture looks great, but sometimes it's difficult to translate it to an equally great implementation, And this has always been like a proposition of SOA, for example, the like design first approach, but we weren't quite there yet for the past few years. And now with API management, we can finally achieve this. You can design great APIs, for example, with Apiary and Blueprint and Swagger, these definitional languages, and it will go hand by hand with the way these APIs are functioning in runtime, and the way your API consumers are really experiencing the functionality that you are providing. So I think for a developer, that's quite cool.
Phil?
Yeah, so I think developers have been working with APIs and not necessarily associated the idea. If you go back 20, 30, 40 years, an API was kind of, we agreed a file format and I'd give you a file with an agreed structure. That was a kind of API in a very, very primitive form. We've got to a stage now where we can try and describe very easily, very lightweight in an API first style mindset of, if I give you this, you can do that, and I'll do this, and we can work collaboratively, but at the same time develop independently, which is really how a team becomes very effective, either in delivering a small component together, or delivering separate components that want to be reused across multiple solutions.
But yeah, let's explore that a little bit. APIs have been around for a while. In what other ways do today's APIs differ from the APIs of way back? Phil?
So the difference now is that we've got a lightweight way of describing it through standards that have evolved so that they're not overweight. We used to use WSDL and things like that, which was so complicated. And you'd spend hours just grafting away in some design tool. Now you've got a very lightweight, very easy form through Swagger and API Blueprint, using tools like Apiary, in Oracle's case, to quickly graft and demonstrate and document the API.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. So from my point of view, I think APIs are just becoming, I've said before, an enterprise asset. So now they're accessible, right? And that's point number one. But point number two, and I complement what Phil said, a developer experience, right? In the past, we used to develop APIs, we used to call them web services, right? But inside out. So we use a standard AWS web services standards, right? With SOAP and WSDLs and etc. And then interpreting a WSDL was like, you couldn't. You had to, know 4 different standards to interpret just a WSDL, right? You had to know XSD, you had to understand, the WSDL notation, if it was RPC encoded, RPC document coded, and all these types, and then you have, it was a very complicated, way to model an endpoint. Now, in the API world, you don't have one standard, you have a few, right? But these standards were created by developers, right, to make it easier for them to interpret what the endpoints are. So it's a different, from the start, right, the approach has been, okay, let's create stuff, endpoints that we can consume, and let's use these languages to make it easier for us to understand what the endpoints are, and what resources they expose, right, and what do I need to send and what do I need to get, right? Very simple stuff, right? And that makes APIs a lot more usable, and if APIs are usable, they're going to be embedded in more applications, right? And the more this happens, right, the more ecosystems you create. And the beauty of this whole thing is that the ecosystems are not within an organization anymore. The ecosystems are B2B, B2C, I2I, machine to machine, and all this is enabled via APIs. So it's just mind-blowing, the hyper-connectivity that has been enabled via APIs. And of course, one thing is APIs, another thing is API management. The API management is the managing of all these endpoints, because you can imagine that you can end up with a hyper-connectivity mess, right? And putting some sort of lightweight governance to make sure that at least you have visibility over those endpoints, who is consuming what, and things like GDPR and all the security compliance issues. It's important that you also have, you can manage and embed strong security, right? So API management as a discipline, right, is introducing capabilities, right, to make sure that all the APIs that you build don't end up into adding more complicated or more complications, to the enterprise. So I think I extended a little bit more on your question, but
no,
yes.
That's all right. Arturo?
Yeah, for me, answering to your question, one of the big differences in APIs before and now is that in the past, if you could develop an API, it would impact probably only the developers trying to use it, that specific community of developers. Now the impact and the reach, it's much bigger. For example, if you develop an API, it's going to impact both the business, the customers, the end users, several developer communities even outside of your organization, and even the revenue streams, which is part of this API economy stuff. So yeah, it's become so much more relevant because of that. I think it has a very big impact in everything that we are.
Yeah, the developer,
doing. Yeah.
The dependencies are far-reaching.
Yeah, and that is why also the word or the term is out there much more than it was before. It was like a developer word, and now it's a common term for everyone involved in IT.
Let's shift gears for a moment. The three of you gentlemen are involved in a project called the Open Modern Enterprise Software Architecture. Talk about that project, talk about its origins and where it is now. Luis?
Very good question. It started last year in Open World, on the back of a presentation I did on APIs and microservices. At the time, it's actually just been a year ago, and it feels like 10 years ago, that fast everything is evolving, right? So it's like, I came up with this architecture trying to join both the old and the new, right? It's like, okay, you have microservices, but they are services, right? You still have all the type of services that maybe are not so decoupled, but there are services at the end of the day, but then how do you marry that into an enterprise type of reusable asset? But then not all APIs are reusable. You're creating APIs for mobile devices in a mobile backend, MCS, to use an Oracle product, for example, right? How does everything hang together? What capabilities do you need? So I did this capability model, right, which I've shared in a few presentations, right? But it kind of, the feedback was so positive, right? And Hayo Norman, unfortunately, he's not here in Open World from Accenture, came to me and said, Luis, I think we should take it to the next level. I think we should, I would like to use your content in some of my projects, and would you be interested in opening up the project, right? And then with other ACE directors, Danilo and Sven and Torsten, they were also on board and said, yeah, we want to use it too, I want to contribute, and then Arturo also got on board, and Rolando, and then it's like all of this, and Lucas as well, and then it's like all of a sudden everyone wanted to contribute to it, and well, basically what I did is I just open sourced, if you can open source a PowerPoint deck. Well, that's what happened, right? The thinking was open source, right? So we all could contribute to it, and then in a split in the partner community forum, we all got together, and we set as a goal to create a proper capability model that we could publish somewhere, and then very quickly we decided where to put it. I know you created a portal for us in the Oracle developer community side, which we use, but then to say, well, GitHub is probably easier. So, well, at the end, we ended up producing some content, which is now available in omesa.io, that everyone's contributing to, and everyone can use in your own projects and your own organization, and it helps. It helps because it's kind of bringing some structure into an area that's moving very fast, and it's very easy as well to get it wrong. And that is, if you make the counterside of so much cool stuff that's out there, that you can very easily start using absolutely everything, right? Deliver quickly, but then you can end up with a lot of silo solutions all over the enterprise, and that's also not good, right? So there has to be a balance. And Omesa helps you put, concepts, right, around the capabilities, and then be able to construct, the drive architecture, right, but also innovate. So that's kind of my 2 cents on this.
Now, Arturo, you've been really active in Omesa recently. Talk about what you've been doing.
Yeah, I think for me, I quickly bought Luis's idea. I thought it was great and really needed. And one good thing is, I've been contributing, but also using this in my own projects or my company's projects with very good experiences, very good results. Why? Because this really provides a lot of value right out of the gates. There's a lot of knowledge, very good knowledge about APIs, about microservices, about decoupling, service orientation out there, but it's very scattered, and when you take on a project, a challenging hybrid or digital transformation project, you need to justify a lot of decisions. You need to find the right capabilities. You need to talk to the stakeholders, to the architects, and you cannot tell to them just, go look into Martin Fowler's definition. I will give you the link, or go look into this PowerPoint deck, because that's not a good conversation to have. And there's nothing that I have found so far in the web or in the community that really puts everything together, that really lets you speak a common language, And Omesa is just that. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. We are just building upon the good stuff that is already there. We are providing some new terms and some new ideas, but weaving together a lot of technologies, making it easier for both architects and developers. We even have a small notation language, a small graphical notation which you can use, and I've been using it, and it's people have liked it because it's simple, it's very representative, it's different from what you may see in this kind of projects, and it really makes life easier. I think it has great potential. Still, it's a work in progress. We have made strides, but we have a lot of people, very bright and talented people, contributing to the cause. So I think this in a year it's grown a lot, but I think it can still grow very much, and it can be used by many people, and it can provide a lot of value. And that is omesa.io again, where you can find this content, and it's constantly growing, and it will keep growing.
Phil, what sort of trouble are you getting into with Omesa?
So I've not done so much of the writing, the documentation. I've more been the critical eye and challenging the guys to say, well, how does this work in this scenario? And bringing the experiences that I've had to the table to say, well, what does it mean when we actually come to realize it? It's great to have these reference architectures, but they need to be practical as well, and real world. And that's one of the nice things about Omesa. It is grounded. It recognizes not a lot of organizations have got these monolithic systems. Even the babies of the microservice world are going to have some big back-end systems that do their accounting. Yeah. Why would you rebuild that? So it's been very much so my contribution's been, look at it, how does that relate to real-world stories that I've seen and worked with? And have we ticked all the boxes? Very easy to get caught up with the nice, fangled new technologies, APIs, things like that. But there's some really tedious details that we can't escape. Compliance, security, all of those style questions. And it's like, have we ticked those boxes in this model? And I've helped the guys then just to start to flesh out some of the ideas and terminology that we've put in.
You know one cool thing? I remember in Split, we decided not to use the term microservice. Yep. We called it semi-decoupled service and fully decoupled service as microservice, right? And then we saw these podcast with yourself and Richard Nicholson. No, Richard Nicholson. Chris Richardson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking
I
about
remember I
Chris.
was there.
Richard Chris. I be talking about him all the time, and I did a post with, I don't know, White Cross. Anyways, with Chris Richardson, and he's saying there's no such thing as a microservice.
Right.
And then we're like, well, that's cool. It's like, this, very common thinking. And I mentioned to you that I met him, had the pleasure of meeting him in Beijing. I was in the Oracle Call Beijing and Oracle Call in Sydney, and we had a nice discussion. And there's a lot of alignment, and some of his patterns are actually being referenced in Omesa as well. So,
Excellent.
so yeah, it's been a very fruitful project, and there's a lot more work to be done. And of course, we're all very busy in the project and so on, but we all contribute to it. So it's looking good.
And that content is publicly available at omesa.io.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. I have one final question, and I want to direct it to Phil and to Arturo. Why didn't you guys wear suits?
Now you're teasing me.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thanks so much for stopping by, taking the time to talk about API management and about Omesa. This is great stuff. I hope people will check it out. And you should also check out developer.oracle.com, where you'll find all sorts of great content for developers. For the Oracle developer community, I'm Bob Rubart. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.